smoke and rumor drift through the empire. In AD 64, fires rage in Rome for 6 days and 7 nights, and the city howls. Torches fill gardens with a light that should never have existed. Nero needs a scapegoat, fast, and a small strange sect that refuses to burn incense to the emperor stands directly in the path of imperial rage. This is the atmosphere that breathes under the words of 1 Peter. The letter is not a calm lecture from a quiet study. It is a survival manual sung like a battle hymn. It calls suffering a teacher, not a tormentor. The furnace, a refiner, not a destroyer. It reads the pain of outcasts as evidence of election, and tells exiles that their displacement is not an accident, but a calling. The sender names himself with a simplicity loaded like a thunderhead. Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ. Not a philosopher with clever words, not a state official with power to protect, but the fisherman from Galilee who watched the resurrection rewrite the meaning of fear. He writes, "To those who are elect, exiles of the dispersion in Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, that is northern and western Asia Minor, roughly modern Turkey, a sweep of provinces lined along the Black Sea, reaching down into ancient cities, threaded with trade routes, guilds, temples, and foreign gods." Peter calls them exiles. He does not mean everyone had physically moved. He baptizes their everyday marginalization with a title from Israel's story. He hands them the identity of Abraham and the Babylonian deportees, and tells them they are inside that story now. It upends the meaning of their pain. Their neighbors' insults are not random darts. They are echoes of the old war. He says the blessing out loud over them in ink, according to the foreknowledge of God the Father, in sanctification of the Spirit, for obedience to Jesus Christ, and for sprinkling with his blood. The entire Trinity stands behind their chosenness, an unbreakable triangle holding them in place. He will not let their suffering define them. He will not let the empire's labels stick. Peter's letter opens like a window flooded with sunlight. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. According to his great mercy, he has caused us to be born again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. That line is a detonator. Born again is not a slogan here. It is a legal declaration of new status, a new citizenship that reframes every loss below. Their inheritance is imperishable, undefiled, and unfading, kept in heaven. Roman law could strip property. Social pressure could slash reputations. Mobs could do worse. Peter steps over every earthly ledger and announces a different vault. Guarded, he says. Kept. And he attaches a startling timestamp, or a salvation ready to be revealed in the last time. The last time is nearer than they feel. Peter rolls out the most radical reason for rejoicing in the middle of trial. Tested faith has a future weight. The outcome eclipses the cost. The word he uses for their trial carries heat, puroseos, like a smelting fire. Their faith, more precious than gold that perishes though tested by fire, will be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. The empire sees nuisance, instability, a threat to the gods. Peter sees a jewel brightening inside the flame. They love him without seeing him. They believe without touching scars and empty tomb. They are receiving the salvation of their souls. Old prophets tried to peer into this mystery, he adds, and angels bend down as if standing on tiptoe with wonder. The letter says their names in heaven are not written in pencil. Then he turns, fast, and tells them what to do with this blazing status. Gird up the loins of your mind. That is the idiom. Roll up the sleeves of your thinking. Be sober-minded. Set your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Be holy in all your conduct. The call is not into a bunker, It is a call into daylight living in front of eyes that do not blink kindly. They were ransomed, he says, not with silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Christ, like that of a lamb without blemish. Ransom language is gritty. Someone paid to buy slaves out of a market. Christ's blood is the currency that cancels the auction. This is why Peter takes holiness personally. You were bought at a cost that tore heaven open. He points to the scriptures Isaiah sang, "All flesh is like grass," and then to the word that remains forever. Fade-resistant life sinks roots in God's promises, not in provincial acceptance. Then he introduces a building project that flips imperial architecture. Welcome to living stone theology. Come to him, a living stone rejected by men, but in the sight of God chosen and precious. You yourselves, like living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house. Rome throws its weight in marble brick and arches you can ride a legion through. Peter invites exiles to imagine a temple made of breathing blocks, arranged by a divine builder who does not even need a permit. A royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession. Once, not a people, now God's people. No genealogists required. Their sacrifices are spiritual, acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. Peter hands them a vocation. Proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. The more they are pushed to the edges, the brighter the proclamation shines. Then the letter takes a turn where tension tightens. Beloved, he says, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh which wage war against your soul. Keep your conduct among the Gentiles honorable. The air crackles with collision. Honorable behavior is not a survival trick. It is a strategy of war. Their good deeds answer slander with a long game, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see and glorify God on the day of visitation. Slander swirls with specific rumors in the 1st century. Christians are called atheists because they refuse the gods, cannibals because they speak of eating the body and drinking the blood, haters of humanity because they stop participating in rites that knit the city together. Peter does not coach them to blend. He tells them to do good, publicly, relentlessly, confidently, so that the city sees a mirror it cannot easily crack. And then he walks into the most controversial hallway. Be subject for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether to the emperor as supreme or to governors. He writes this inside an empire that will crucify him. He is not naive. He is not baptizing tyranny. He is instructing a minority movement to build a reputation that disarms default accusations. Honor everyone. Love the brotherhood. Fear God. Honor the emperor. The order matters. The emperor receives honor. God alone receives fear. A follower of Jesus bends to law yet keeps a spine of steel before idolatry. When public reputation matters and survival sits on the line, Peter says a strange thing. Silence ignorance by doing good. Their lives become argument. He drills down further into households. Servants, he writes, be subject to your masters with all respect, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the unjust. The word servant points to household slaves in that world, people with limited agency under Roman law. Peter does not applaud injustice. He names it. Then he does something radical. He ties unjust endurance to the cross. This is a gracious thing, he says. When mindful of God, one endures sorrows while suffering unjustly. For to this you have been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving an example so that you might follow in his steps. And he quotes Isaiah 53 like a drumbeat. He committed no sin, neither was deceit found in his mouth. When he was reviled, he did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but continued entrusting himself to him who judges justly. He bore our sins in his body on the tree. This is not a sentimental poster. It is a pattern written in blood that redraws how a powerless person stands under a heavy hand. The cross is not simply a Sabbath truth. It becomes a weekday map. Peter speaks to wives next, specifically those married to unbelieving husbands in a culture where a wife was expected to adopt her husband's gods. He commends purity and reverence, the quiet power of chaste conduct, not external braiding of hair and gold, but the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit. This is not a silencing of voice. It is a volcanic core of courage that refuses to fight slander with spectacle. He points to Sarah's hope in God, an ancient matriarch, standing like an early pillar. Husbands he addresses too. Live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, culturally more vulnerable in that world. Since you are heirs together of the grace of life, he attaches a trembling warning. Failing here hinders prayer. Domestic piety under trial is not optional. It is frontline warfare. The unity of heirs showcases a kingdom that erases arrogance. Then he aims the arrow straight at the hardest wall. Do not repay evil for evil, or reviling for reviling. Bless instead. You were called to this, that you may obtain a blessing. The quote from Psalm 34 lands like a promise lettered in gold. Keep your tongue from evil, and your lips from deceit. Turn away from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayer. The face of the Lord is against those who do evil. Peter is stacking logs for a fire that burns without bitterness. He is not telling them to like persecution. He is training them to reflect a different calculus, one that believes heaven's ear is open, and that ground-level injustice cannot overrule that court. Under this, he plants a line that defines apologetics long before it becomes a discipline. In your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense, an apologia, to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect. The famous instruction sits inside a council on suffering, not on debate podiums. The assumption is not public applause. It is public suspicion, and within that, someone notices a pulse that does not match the ambient noise. Behavior opens the door for explanation. Gentleness keeps it open. Then comes one of the most difficult paragraphs in the New Testament, and Peter walks in without flinching. Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the Spirit, in which he went and proclaimed to the spirits in prison. Interpretations multiply across centuries. Some read in this a proclamation through Noah by the Spirit to a disobedient generation before the flood, then bound. Others see the risen Christ announcing victory to rebellious spiritual beings after his death, not for their salvation, but as a declaration of triumph. Peter connects it to the days of Noah, patience of God while the ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is, 8 persons, were brought safely through water. Baptism, he says next, now saves you, not as a removal of dirt from the body, but as an appeal to God for a good conscience, through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The Greek word eperotema carries the idea of appeal or pledge. Baptism is not a bath. It is a covenant clasp with a risen Lord who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of God, with angels, authorities, and powers having been subjected to him. Over every unseen power that animates hostility, Peter paints a banner, already subdued. The letter refuses to let suffering drift into vagueness. It targets the exact turning points everyone senses but cannot name. Enough time, he says, has passed for living in what the Gentiles want to do. Sensuality, passions, drunkenness, orgies, drinking parties, and lawless idolatry. They malign you for refusing that flood of debauchery. This is the social pressure no imperial edict needs to provoke. It is the sting that meets a Christian who steps away from expected rites in a trade guild festival, who refuses a libation, who walks out of a banquet when obscene songs rise. Peter says evaluation is coming. He announces judgment with a sobriety that is not gloating. They will give account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead. The gospel was announced even to the dead, likely those who are now dead who heard it while alive, so that, though judged in the flesh the way people are, they might live in the spirit the way God does. Death does not cancel the good news any more than crucifixion canceled resurrection. The timeline stretches beyond the grave. Because the end of all things is at hand, he writes with immediacy, "Be self-controlled and sober-minded for the sake of your prayers. Above all, keep loving one another earnestly. Love covers a multitude of sins. Show hospitality without grumbling. Use your gifts as good stewards of God's varied grace. Whoever speaks, as one speaking oracles of God. Whoever serves, as by the strength that God supplies." The point is not to build celebrity teachers or heroic volunteers. It is that in everything God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. To him belong glory and dominion forever and ever. The church becomes a constellation of gifts, lighting up harsh nights. Then Peter swings to the burning core again. Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you. He already named fire earlier. Now he doubles the warning, as though something strange were happening. Rejoice insofar as you share Christ's sufferings, that you may also rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed. If you are insulted for the name of Christ, you are blessed, because